Hello, class. This is Dr. Green. Wanted to share with you some announcements for week 5. Week 5 is drafting your primer. And with this is going to come with writing a topical outline. So I'm already situated here in the discussion 5, drafting your primer. Now, it may seem like there's not a lot of work involved with this, but it is. So let me walk you through what you're going to do. So these action items, it mentions start off by looking at the instructions for the research area primer assignment, which is the week 6 assignment. So the work that you're doing in week 5 is getting you ready for the week 6 assignment. So everyone, please look ahead to what is required in week 6 so that you know what you're working towards with this week 5 assignment. Next, it says review the sample topical outline in the Galvin and Galvin textbook. You do want to look at it, and I'm going to show you exactly what that outline looks like. So this is the outline that you're asked to take a look at. Sample example 9.31 is a sample topic outline, and you're going to outline your research area primer. So you're going to start off with your introduction. You may not have a definition of terms, but I'm going to show you a template that I think that will help you with laying out your research area primer draft. So, but I first just want you to pay attention to this format of the outline. You notice you do not see any fully written out paragraphs in the outline. An outline is an outline. It's a sketch of what it is you want to talk about in these sections. And then when we scroll down to the next page, you see some more content where the outline, depending on how much you have to talk about, you'll have more sections. And again, there are no paragraphs in the outline, and your outline for your primer should not have any paragraphs. So that's very important. Now, let me share with you a template that I think is going to help you all with laying out your primer. So I took the assignment instructions that you see, and in the discussion 5 assignment tab there, and it's telling you that you have to write out a topical outline. So I just finished showing you Galvin and Galvin's sample outline. Well, here is how you will lay out yours for your primer. So you will have your introduction, and your introduction must have 4 components: the rationale, the themes, trends, or patterns that emerge from the literature you read on your topic, your research questions or question, you may only have one question, and the central takeaways from the literature thus far. Let's look at the introduction in detail here. The rationale. This is where you will take your problem statement from your week 1, envision your research plan. If your problem statement has changed since week 1, then use the latest problem statement you have for your research topic. Right here in this section is where you can mention the gap in the research if a gap exists. And then you will proceed to the next section. Now, some of you may, and you should at this point, already have sources that will validate that your research problem is a real problem. So proceed with citing the source that is supporting that problem statement, because that's your line of reasoning. That's your claim, your central claim. Without that problem, there is no research question. There is no literature review. So then you go to your themes. So here you will mention your themes. So you may say here in this sentence, the following 3 themes emerge from the existing literature. That's what you can put for B. The following 3 themes emerge from, or patterns or trends emerge from the existing literature. And in 1, 2, and 3, you will name out the names for that theme, for the pattern, or that trend. And you need 3 because, again, you got to have 3 themes for the research area primer assignment. Next, you mention your research questions you want to explore. And then mention the central takeaways from the literature thus far. So that means that you're going to want to write out in short sentences, some takeaways so far from the literature. And again, you're following the format from our sample topic outline from Galvin and Galvin, as you see here. Okay. Now, we'll move into the next section, the body of your primer. Now, this one here, you will give your theme your name. So take the name that you gave for, for theme 1. And then it says use 2 to 3 sources synthesized in your week 4 annotation exercise to name your theme 1. So you may not have a name, so that's why I put that statement in there. So I'm just saying you can use the 2 to 3 sources that you synthesized in your week 4 annotation exercise to give your theme 1 a name. And then you will mention mention what you know about this theme based on the literature thus far. Mention what you know about this theme. Again, you just repeat the steps. So you can have, these 3 or more sections for theme 1. I just stopped at 3, but you can go beyond that. And I made that statement here. You can stop at the section 3 or just proceed with additional sections. Then once you're all done outlining theme 1, then you go to theme 2. So theme 2, that means you're going to have the resources on theme 2 to know what you're going to talk about. Where are the connections between the sources? And I want to share with you that in your note taking, you should be seeing connections between the sources. So that should help make your theme 2 not that difficult to outline. And then you will repeat the same steps with identifying your theme 3 content. And then you go to the conclusion. Summarize key points from the existing literature. Mention how the research findings address your research question or questions. Tell your readers how your research can contribute to your subject's current body of knowledge, discipline, industry, or workplace. So what we can do here is we can just begin to mention what some of these are. And you want to do short sentences, not paragraphs. So when you get this template, you're going to see some actual little sections that you can write into. So you will refrain from writing out a conclusion in paragraphs because it needs to be in the topical outline format. Then we go to the next part of the assignment instructions, which is asking you to, it says, have a 1-paragraph discussion of the theme or trend. So when we go back to this template, your theme discussion, this is going to be fully written out, just like what you did for the week 4 annotation exercise where you synthesize 2 or maybe even 3 sources. So I'm sharing with you in this information here that you can copy and paste your synthesized paragraph from your week 4 annotation exercise and synthesize your third source into this theme discussion. If your third source was already synthesized into the theme discussion, you can move on to the next section, which is to annotate your second source for theme 1, pattern 1, or trend 1. And then this is where, after you've gotten your theme overview written out, now it's time to annotate your second source. So what do we mean by annotating the second source? You annotated the first source in week 4 during that annotation exercise. So here is telling you to annotate a second source. So that means that your second source should have the bibliographic information, just like you did for week 4. And if you need some guidance on how to format your bibliographic information, here's a link here to click on to get guidance. And then in 8 sentences, make sure the annotation has a summary of what the source is saying. Mention the source's strengths or limitations, explain why the source is relevant to your research focus. So this is not an outline that you're creating. This is the real annotation that you're doing, like what you did in week 4. Now, once the annotation is written out, it's time to create a source table for your first theme, your first pattern or first trend that you had synthesized and written your annotations on. Your source table is based on the annotations that you have written, where you have to draw connections between the sources. When you have to synthesize the three sources, you saw connections, and those connections should be featured in the source table. Now, Galvin and Galvin provides a source table example. It's called a synthesis matrix. And it's much like what I was showing you in our week 4 class meeting. And I have a sample table that I have replicated here, an example of one that you can take a look at. Now, the format doesn't have to look like this. The wording don't have to be like this. This is an example. I encourage everyone to go to Galvin and Galvin's book and look at their sample table so that you can get a sense of what it is you want to, how you want to set yours up. It needs to be easy to read. You can insert additional columns and rows. It's okay. Um, you don't have to stick with what you see here. This is just an example. And some of you may have definition of terms that a table will be great for, because there's certain terms that are used throughout the literature, throughout the primer, and you need readers to know what those definitions are. So create a source table based on definitions. How about if you have 3 sources that are just giving 3 different definitions of a concept? Or, that's a great table to include in your theme. And that can be your main source table for that theme, or in this case, theme 1. But you're going to be creating additional source tables starting in week 6. Some of you may decide that you just want to do more than the one source table. You're like, I'm ready to write out my content for theme 2. I'm ready to annotate my 3 sources for theme 2. I have my content ready to put into a source table for theme 2. So if you want to go, do more because you have time, I encourage you to, because this project is a lot of work. And me personally, I wouldn't want to wait until next Wednesday, the following Wednesday, which is in week 6, to try working on more of this. So after you have submitted your initial draft into the discussion forum this week, don't stop working on it until like several days later. Keep plugging at it. Keep adding to it, because in the following week, you're going to give your draft to your peer for review. Now, some of you may be giving the same draft that you submitted in week 5 to your peer for review. But if you want to have even more substantive feedback on what you've written, then and add more content to it so that you can get more feedback. And then hopefully there will be less updates that you'll have to make based on feedback that you'll get from me from your week 5 draft, and feedback you'll get from your peer during week 6. And then you'll be well on your way to submitting the final version on Sunday, which is Sunday, the end of week 6. Now, after you have written out your source table, you have a source table paragraph to create. And that paragraph has to be at least 3 to 5 sentences. And you are explaining to readers, what is this content in this table talking about? Why is this content relevant to my research focus? Some of you may say, this is why the content is relevant in this table, because it answers your research questions. And you can name out what those research questions are that the table is answering. I say that the table must be, the paragraph must be synthesized. So some of you may feel like you're like, my writing, it feels a little redundant. Well, that's gonna happen in writing a literature review, because you're presenting information to readers multiple times on saying certain things, oftentimes frequently, and it is to drill in a point for them. So the first time that readers are seeing a synthesized paragraph should not be in the source table. It should start off in the theme discussion. All right, so I gave some examples about provide statement about position the authors in conversation with one another. I recommend you look at the week 4 class meeting PowerPoint presentation. It's that shows all of the um, different ways to synthesize information, looking for pros and cons, commonalities, similarities, differences, contradictions, disagreements, pros, cons, those things like that, so that it can help you with an agreement. That's another way of synthesizing, where you can position the authors to be in conversation with each other. Now, looking ahead to week 6, so like I've stated before, even the assignment instructions for the primer draft says that you should look out at the week 6 primer assignment. You want to make sure you have a fully written out introduction in week 6. You annotated 3 sources for each theme, pattern, or trend. That's a total of 9 sources that you'll need. And each theme, pattern, or trend has overviews that are synthesized. The source tables, they are based on the theme, pattern, or trend that you synthesize. All 3 source tables have an overview of what the tables are about. And then you have your conclusion fully written out. So you go back to your outline and fully write out your conclusion. Your reference page. It is not a requirement that you have all 25 sources identified in week 6 for your literature review. You may only have 9, which is the required number you need for the primer, but you are welcome to include more. That doesn't mean that those additional sources, the ones that's more than 9, must be cited in the primer. It's just letting your readers know that these sources are to come. This is what's coming up next. And then you have an appendix page, which is after the reference page, with a screen photo of your note-taking process, or you can write out what your note-taking process consisted of. So that is what you are working towards in week 6. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Take care, everyone.